When I walked into the courtroom, no one noticed me. Not at first. I kept my sunglasses on and chose a seat in the very back row, close to the exit, where the fluorescent lights couldn't quite reach. The wood-paneled walls, the low murmur of attorneys flipping through binders, the hum of 1,000 whispered judgments, it all felt too familiar, like stepping back into a house where you were once unwelcome. My name wasn't on the docket, my face wasn't on the news that day, but my brother's was. Jacob Whitmore, Assistant District Attorney for Chatham County, stood accused of falsifying evidence in an immigration trial. The charges were serious. The courtroom was full of reporters, activists, the family of the woman he tried to deport, and of course my parents. I hadn't seen them in over 15 years. My mother, Margaret, still wore her pearls. My father, Douglas, sat beside her, upright and unreadable, hands folded in prayer or pretense. They looked like statues carved from pride and dust. I told no one I was coming. Not my aides, not the press, not even my closest staff. I wasn't there to speak. I wasn't there to interfere. I came to witness. The bailiff called the room to order. The judge entered, Honorable Deborah Clark, sharp-eyed and known for her intolerance for theatrics. She adjusted her glasses, scanned the courtroom, then paused. "Is that," she squinted, "is that Representative Sarah Whitmore?" Every head turned. I felt it ripple before I saw it, the silence folding in like a wave. The air thinned. The reporters near the front began murmuring. One whispered into a phone. Another raised a camera. I could see Jacob's shoulders stiffen as he turned, and then, his face, his jaw dropped. My mother's lips parted. My father leaned forward, squinting like he'd seen a ghost. No one spoke. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I just met their gaze and held it. The girl they had cast out forgotten, erased, was no longer a stain on the family name. She was a state legislator. She was powerful. She had returned not with rage or revenge, but with presence. And that was louder than any word I could have said. The judge cleared her throat, straightened her notes, and the hearing resumed. But no one truly settled after that. I sat there, still and quiet, while Jacob's defense began. But in the backs of their mind-sievery last one of them, I knew what they were thinking. She came back. And this time, she wasn't the one on trial. Back in 2005, I was just Sarah, the eldest child in a family that measured success by transcripts, titles, and silence. Our home in Savannah was pristine. No chipped paint, no raised voices. We were the kind of family that sent out Christmas cards with matching sweaters. The kind where no one asked hard questions and everyone smiled just a little too wide. My father, Douglas Whitmore, was a decorated military physician. My mother, Margaret, taught ethics at the university. Appearances were everything. I didn't fit. I loved to draw. I stayed up late sketching people I saw at the park, capturing shadows on paper instead of memorizing case law like Jacob. I carried journals everywhere, quoted Toni Morrison at the dinner table, and once turned down a science fair trophy because I thought my experiment wasn't honest enough. To them, that wasn't integrity. That was embarrassment. The rift widened the summer I turned 19. One of my classmates, a girl named Tasha, confided in me that our high school principal had touched her in ways no adult should. She was terrified. I believed her, and I spoke up. I told my mother first, thinking she'd know what to do. Her face didn't move. "Sarah," she said carefully, "do you understand what you're accusing someone of?" "I'm not accusing anyone," I replied. "I'm telling you what she said. It's happening. We don't start fires we can't put out," she said. "Do you understand me?" I didn't. Not then. But the next week, I was pulled from my summer internship. The principal was never investigated. Tasha transferred schools. And my parents never brought it up again, not even once. That's when I realized something cruel but clear. The truth only matters if it protects the right people. I started to drift after that. I stopped coming home on weekends. I didn't join family calls. I began painting more, even tried selling prints online. My professors encouraged me, but at home, no one asked about it. At Thanksgiving that year, Jacob made a speech about being accepted into Duke Law. The whole table toasted to him. My mother clinked glasses and called him a Whitmore through and through. No one asked how my poetry reading went the night before. No one noticed I didn't eat. A week later, I packed a duffel bag with sketchbooks, clothes, and a framed photo of my grandfather, only one who ever said I had a mind like wildfire. I left a note on the kitchen table. It simply said, "I love you, but I can't stay quiet." I didn't expect a chase. I didn't get one. No phone call, no knock on my dorm room door, just silence. I moved in with a friend from campus, thinking it would just be for a few days. I stayed for nearly a year. Sometimes I'd wonder if they even noticed the space I left behind, the empty chair at the dinner table, the jacket still hanging in the closet. But knowing my mother, she probably donated it all by Monday. I wasn't missed. I was erased. But I didn't stop drawing. I didn't stop writing. Not even when I started running out of paper and had to use the backs of receipts. That's the thing about people like me who don't vanish. We just become harder to find. I was 20, and finally beginning to feel like my own person. I had started working part-time at a bookstore in Atlanta, taking community college courses in creative writing. I'd even found a quiet rhythm in a small shared apartment, with a roommate who minded her business and always left the kitchen light on for me. Then came the video. I still don't know how he got it. Maybe he had copied it before I erased it. Maybe he just liked knowing he could ruin me if I ever left. I'd broken up with Darren 3 months before. He hadn't taken it well. The clip was only 30 seconds, shot during spring break. It wasn't scandalous, not in a world addicted to shock, but it was private. Personal. I was laughing. Drunk. I said something vulnerable. And it had my name, my face, and my voice. Within days, it spread. The first text came from Jacob. Not to me, to my father. Before the press sees this. I found out only after my scholarship was suddenly under review. My college email account was locked. My internship application was rescinded. I didn't understand why until my roommate shoved her phone into my hands. It was there. Blurry, pixelated, but unmistakable. By the time I called my parents, it was too late. My mother didn't even say hello. Her voice was cold. "You've humiliated this family." I stammered. "I didn't post it. I didn't even know he had it." "You recorded yourself like that?" My father barked in the background. "You handed him the weapon." I was 20. I was hurt. "I made a mistake." "No," he said. "You became one." I cried. I begged them to believe me. I told them I needed support, that I was scared, that I didn't know how to make it stop. Silence. Then, "We raised you better." And the line went dead. 2 days later, I came back to Savannah. My old key didn't work. The front porch light was off. There was a bag on the doorstep, a suitcase, half-zipped, with some clothes, my old sketch pad, and a worn copy of Beloved with a note tucked inside. "We wish you healing." There was no signature. I knocked anyway. Once. Twice. My mother peeked from behind the curtain. She saw me, and she turned away. That was the moment something broke in me. Not shattered. Breaking implies sharpness. This was slower. A kind of folding, like paper creasing into something smaller, quieter. I sat on the porch for an hour. Then I walked away. Back at my apartment, I found another email waiting. From Jacob. "You brought this on yourself. If you'd been more careful, we wouldn't have had to do this." "We." I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stared at the screen and whispered one sentence to myself. I am not them, but part of me wanted to be, still. Some fractured child inside still thought if I explained better, if I apologized harder, maybe they'd undo it. That night I tried calling again. No one picked up. The next morning, the locks on my school housing were changed. My ID card was deactivated, A note was posted to my door: housing removed due to student conduct code violation, no hearing, no appeal. I was officially homeless, the daughter of a decorated military doctor, the sister of a rising legal star, sleeping on the couch of a girl I barely knew, eating instant soup, carrying everything I owned in 2 bags. I had lost my name, my roof, my records, and most of my dignity. All because I refused to be silent. All because my brother thought loyalty meant protecting an imaginata person. All because I had trusted the wrong boy and was born into the wrong kind of family. That week, I stopped using the name Whitmore. Not legally, just emotionally. It no longer felt like mine. Portland was gray in ways Savannah never was. Not just in the sky, but in the spirit of the streets. I arrived with $53, 2 bags, and no one waiting for me. My friend who had said, "Come crash for a while," meant a few days. I stretched it to 3 weeks. She never asked me to leave, but the coldness in her voice one morning over coffee said everything. So I left. For months, I floated between couches, old college friends, and once even a stranger who saw me crying in a laundromat and offered a floor and a blanket. I took it. Pride is a luxury for people with options. Eventually, I found a room to rent an appealing yellow house near the outskirts of East Portland. $290 a month. No heat, 1 window, mold in the shower. But it had a lock, and no one looked at me like I owed them something. That felt like peace. I picked up jobs wherever I could. I washed dishes at a 24-hour diner. I handed out flyers for a discount dental clinic. I cleaned houses. One afternoon, I helped scrub blood off the floors of a dentist's office after a botched extraction. The receptionist handed me a $5 tip like she was doing charity. I said thank you. I meant it. I stopped looking in mirrors after a while. There wasn't much to see. Hair tied up in the same knot every day. Jeans washed until they thinned like paper. Eyes that used to hold defiance now just looked tired. But I kept my notebooks. Even when I could barely afford food, I always had a pen. I'd scribble on the backs of envelopes, old receipts, even napkins from the diner. Not stories, just pieces. Observations. A line here, a sketch there. Anything to remind myself that something inside me was still trying to speak. One night, I came home to find the landlord had posted a late rent notice on my door. I sat on the mattress, no bed frame, just the floor, and read the slip 5 times. I didn't cry. I just folded it in half, placed it under the candle on my desk, and stared at it. Then I reached for the shoebox I kept in the closet. Inside were things I hadn't touched since I left Savannah. A photo of me and Jacob when we were kids, building a blanket fort. An old scarf from my mother, still smelling faintly of her perfume. A handful of letters she wrote to me in middle school, back when she called me her wildflower. I pulled out the letters one by one and read them, slowly, as if I could breathe in the girl I used to be. Then I lit a match. I burned every one, not with anger, with finality. It was the kind of quiet burn that doesn't scream, just glows. The flames curled the paper inward like it was trying to keep a secret. When it was done, I took the ashes outside and let the wind scatter them down the street. My hands shook, but not from fear, from release. Inside, I sat down at my rickety desk, opened a blank notebook, and wrote one sentence. I have no name, no title, no one, but I still have hands. So I will begin. That winter, I shaved my head. Not to make a statement, not for some cinematic transformation. I just wanted to stop recognizing the person in the mirror. I wanted a face that didn't belong to the girl crying outside her parents' house. So I cut until the sink was full of hair, and then I slept. A week later, I registered a new name with a temp agency, S. Monroe. That was it. No full name, just a letter and a whisper of something else. They didn't ask questions. I didn't offer answers. And just like that, I disappeared in plain sight. It started with an old woman falling. I was walking home from a late shift at the diner still in my apron, still smelling like burnt coffee and fried onions when I saw her trip outside a city office building downtown. Her grocery bags flew everywhere. People stared but didn't move. I ran to her. She had a bruised knee and teary eyes but was more embarrassed than hurt. "I'm fine," she kept saying. "I'm fine." I picked up her oranges and helped her sit on the steps. A local news van happened to be nearby covering something else. They caught the whole thing. The footage went viral the next day. Mysterious woman helps stranger outside City Hall. I wasn't named, but the image me crouching beside that woman circulated. It reached a woman named Carmen Velasquez. She ran a small nonprofit called Haven House, helping survivors of domestic abuse find housing and legal aid. She found me through a staff member who recognized me from the diner. Carmen walked into my life with a warmth that didn't ask questions. She said, "We don't hire heroes. We hire people who show up." I showed up. At first, it was just admin work, sorting files, answering phones, keeping track of paper trails. But I listened. I asked questions. I read everything I could. The stories broke me open. Women with broken teeth and broken lives. Kids sleeping on office couches. Survivors so quiet you had to lean in just to hear them say, "I want to leave." I wasn't ready to help them yet, not fully. But I was learning. At night, I signed up for free community legal classes. I borrowed textbooks from a woman in the office who used to be a paralegal. I started reading law the way I used to read fiction, line by line, word by word, until I understood the rhythm. I applied to Oregon State's adult degree completion program under the name S. Monroe. I was accepted. The first class I walked into, I was 10 years older than everyone else, and 3 paychecks away from eviction. But when I opened my notebook, I felt something click. I had no legacy, no mentor, no safety net, but I had momentum. Over the next 5 years, I built myself from the marrow. I worked nights and studied days. I interned with legal clinics. I shadowed hearings at the courthouse on my days off. Eventually, Carmen handed me a proposal and said, "You wrote this better than our lawyers. Ever think about going further?" It terrified me. But I applied to law school anyway. Didn't get in the first time, or the second. But on the third try, I got a call. Not a letter, a call from a small but scrappy program at Pacific Northwest Law. They said, "We see something in you." No one had said that in years. I graduated with no fanfare, no family in the audience, no flowers. But I walked across that stage with a spine straighter than ever. I went back to Haven House this time, not as a clerk, but as their legal advocate. Then I helped open a second location, then a third. Somewhere along the way, I became a name people whispered in state meetings, the woman who did the work. In 2022, I ran for Oregon's House of Representatives, not as Sarah Whitmore, but as S. Monroe, community advocate. Fighter, survivor, believer. I didn't run on promises. I ran on paper trails, shelter rosters, court wins, and policy drafts I'd helped write at 3 a.m. while living off instant noodles and borrowed hope. They called it the quietest campaign with the loudest impact. And I won. By the time I took my oath, I had forgotten what it felt like to be that girl on her parents' porch. I had built a life so far from them, so wide, so real it didn't need their validation anymore. I had become someone, and they didn't even know it. The story about Jacob hit every major outlet on a Thursday morning. Assistant District Attorney Jacob Whitmore under investigation for evidence tampering in a federal immigration case. I saw the headline over coffee in my office in Salem. I read the article twice, then once more. My phone started buzzing within minutes advisors, staff, press contacts. Some asked if I wanted to make a statement. Others assumed I'd stay silent. After all, no one outside a handful of people even knew I was Jacob's sister, but I knew I had to see it with my own eyes. I didn't tell anyone. I flew to Savannah under a private booking, entered the courthouse through a side door, and took a seat in the far back row. Jacob stood at the defense table, crisp, navy suit, jaw locked, same jaw that used to clench when I beat him at Scrabble. He hadn't changed much, same confidence, same arrogance. But today, he looked smaller somehow. And then it happened. The judge, same one from before, glanced around the courtroom and froze. Is that Governor S. Monroe? Heads turned. Cameras clicked. Jacob's face went pale, and my parents seated behind him looked like they'd been dropped into ice water. My father blinked like he couldn't process it. My mother reached for her pearls, a reflex she'd never broken. I didn't move, didn't wave, didn't smile, just met their eyes and let them feel the weight of me. I was no longer a ghost. I was power. After the hearing adjourned, they didn't approach me. Not then. But that night, an invitation arrived at my hotel. Dinner at the house. Just family. Please. Signed, Mom. Against every instinct, I went. The Whitmore home looked smaller. Or maybe I had just grown too large to fit inside it anymore. The porch had new lights. The curtains were different. But the silence, it was still exactly the same. They were all there. My father in a neatly ironed shirt. My mother trying too hard to smile. Jacob with a glass of wine he barely touched. The table was set like we were celebrating something. We weren't. The meal passed in awkward small talk. Stories about neighbors, politics, the weather. Like we weren't sitting on top of 15 years of silence. Then Jacob cleared his throat. I know I made mistakes, he said, eyes locked on his plate. I never thought it would get this far. There was a pause. Then my mother reached for my hand, hesitated. We were wondering, maybe you could say something to the prosecutor. Nothing official, just a character statement. It could make a difference. That was it. The ask. The real reason I was there. I put down my fork. The sound echoed like a gavel. I looked at all of them, one by one. Their eyes pleading in different languages. Guilt, fear, calculation. Then I asked, softly but firmly, if I weren't the governor, would I still be your blood? No one answered. Not a single word. Just silence, the same silence they weaponized against me for years. So I stood up. The chair creaked. The air shifted. I kept your name, I said, but I built my life without you in it. My father's face tightened. My mother looked like she might cry. Jacob didn't look up, and I walked out. This time, no suitcase on the porch. No note, just me, stepping into the night without their weight on my back. The next morning, I introduced a new bill in Oregon's legislature, the Personal Witness Protection Act, a measure designed to protect whistleblowers, public servants, and survivors from having their pasts used against them by family members in power. It made no mention of the Whitmores, but everyone knew. The press swarmed. Headlines shifted. Governor Monroe speaks for the silenced. A personal battle becomes public policy. She was erased. Now she's writing the rules. And not one of them my mother, my father, my brother called me. Not to thank me. Not to curse me. Just silence again. But this time, I was the one who chose it. The conference wasn't glamorous. No grand ballroom, no flashing lights. Just a community center gym in Eugene, with folding chairs, lukewarm coffee, and a microphone that squealed whenever someone adjusted it. But it was full. Survivors, advocates, former whistleblowers, people who had lost jobs, families, reputations simply for telling the truth. They introduced me simply. Representative S. Monroe advocate, policymaker, daughter. That last word settled into the air like dust. I walked to the stage. My blazer was plain. No makeup, just my voice. I was once called a disgrace, I began. Then I was erased. Then I was threatened. Not with violence, but with memories. The room went still. My story isn't unique. Many of you have lived it. When truth makes you an enemy in your own home, silence becomes survival. But silence should never be the price of belonging. I paused, scanning the crowd. My eyes landed on Hermie Mother, seated quietly in the third row. No pearls this time. just a weathered cardigan, hands clasped so tightly they shook. She didn't speak, but her eyes were full. Farther back, almost hidden in the dim corner of the room, sat my father, alone. No suit, just an old man with his arms folded like a barrier even he no longer believed in. Jacob wasn't there. His absence said enough. Near the front row, there was an empty chair. A white card sat on it, reserved for who I used to be. Some in the room noticed. A few even teared up. I smiled not out of triumph, but peace. I'd like to introduce a new addition to our policy proposal, I continued. We're calling it the Public Kinship Clausia Protection for public employees who report abuse or corruption involving family members. Because conflict of interest doesn't stop at the dinner table. And truth shouldn't cost you your name. The applause was quiet, but real. Afterward, a woman approached me, gray hair, deep lines on her face, maybe 60. She said, "What if one day they really change? What if they come back different?" I didn't hesitate. "I'll let them tell their story," I said, "but I won't rewrite mine to make them comfortable." That evening, I walked home alone. No cameras, no entourage, just me, crossing a quiet park as leaves fell gently around me. For the first time in my life, I felt unburdened not because the past had disappeared, but because it no longer weighed more than my present. I didn't need closure, I needed clarity, and I had it. I didn't forgive them because they earned it. I forgave them because I refused to carry what they tried to bury me under. I stepped onto my porch that night, my name, my silence, and paused at the door. And for the first time in 15 years, I whispered it out loud. My name is Sarah Whitmore, and I am not ashamed. If you've ever felt like the black sheep, if your truth made you the outcast, if silence was expected just so others could stay comfortable, then this story was for you, and maybe just maybe it was also about you. I'd love to know, have you ever been pushed away by the very people who were supposed to protect you? Drop a comment below. You never know who might feel a little less alone because of your voice. And if this story moved something in you, then just a little hit that subscribe button. This channel is a space for stories that don't just end with survival, but begin with becoming. Thank you for walking this road with me. I'll see you in the next chapter.